So fraud is an issue with fake clicks because there are companies out there from all kinds of different countries all over the world who will try to get onto programmatic buys, for instance, with their website, and then have bots that do the clicking and the downloading of the pages, and they are therefore generating money from programmatic buys that are phony and fraudulent, and there's a lot of that going on. Hacking, we all know about. Privacy, we've talked about. Monopolies is the issue of Facebook and Google and Amazon controlling so much of the internet in the U.S. and in many other countries. And there is talk from some presidential candidates, I think Elizabeth Warren is one, about breaking up some of these companies. This kind of breaking up of monopolies was done a long time ago in the 20th century, for instance, with Standard Oil, where Standard Oil controlled the oil fields, the refining, the railroads, and Standard Oil was broken up. So they were not vertically integrated. They were broken up geographically. And by the way, anyone who had a share of Standard Oil after it was broken up into all these different companies made a fortune because it unlocked actually a lot of value. Anyway, so Facebook, Google buy up their rivals, and so no one can challenge them, and they're just so huge. Can anyone ever catch up, and is it right for them to control so much of the internet? We've talked about false and malevolent content, particularly on the social networks without any filter. What's going to happen with that? And why isn't there a Can-Spam Act for what goes on social media, for example? And if people out there are smart enough to make bots that can click and download pages, etc., why can't the social media companies in particular automate finding bad content? I know they've done a fair amount of that, but maybe they need to push that a little harder. And then the other issue is measurement, which we talked about in terms of how they count impressions, particularly. That's a weak area. So there are definitely issues with internet media. This is from the IAB again, and this is about measuring. You can see down here the following details are key components. A valid ad impression may only be counted when an ad counter receives in response to an HTTP request. An ad counter is the tag, the pixel. Request for a tracking asset from a client. The count must happen after the initiation of retrieval of underlying page content. So, again, when the page is uploaded, it counts as an impression. And here is just some thoughts in terms of issues about social media. And the issue is, of course, back to our definition of a medium, something that is medium if it's in between two other things. With social media, we don't know who's on the other side, who has the megaphone, who's on the other side of the mirror. Okay. All right. We had already talked about free speech, but here I find it in the deck. That is the actual amendment, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. That's illegal. And the case where someone was picketing and trying to convince people in line to enlist for the war, World War I, this is the Schenck versus United States case, which defined that freedom of speech did not cover speech which represented to society a clear and present danger. This is European versus U.S. privacy policy on the privacy issue. It's just an article in the New York Times that ran a while back, actually 2016, but it's still relevant. So this is some ways European privacy policy is different. So if you had one bad night and you had some bad pictures on social media that you wish weren't on there, you have the right to be forgotten. And you can ask search engines to remove links to something that is unfavorable to you. And there's no blanket ruling in the U.S. that allows people to delete or remove negative information about themselves online. So when a company is hacked in Europe, a company must notify within 3 days of discovering a breach. In the U.S., notification does not have time constraint for companies. And here's the issue of what information companies have on you. In Europe, you can ask any company to send you details about what data it has and what the information is used for. You can actually ask them to erase it. In the U.S., so far, that is not the case. Although in some companies, like Twitter, as it says, you're allowed to download your own archives. Another one about children. Their data being collected and used, because there isn't too much in Europe about that. And in the U.S., we do have a requirement on that. So there are some differences between Europe and the U.S. in terms of privacy policy. And it looks as if the U.S. is getting closer to Europe in that regard. Here are media planners' concerns with online advertising from Statista as of August 2016. And this shows what percent of media planners list this as something as a primary concern. And so transparency of results is the primary concern. Viewability. Okay, and here you get to whether someone has actually seen the ad. Is it down at the bottom of the page, or whatever the case may be? Fraud is a high. Brand safety, data privacy, ad blocking are the concerns. Ad blocking. This is worldwide usage of mobile ad blockers by age, and it says that a lot of people are using mobile ad blockers all over the world. So, as with any medium, we talk about strengths and weaknesses, and strengths, of course, are its amazing targetability. There's never been such a micro-targeted medium. Fast to get ads up. High reach because of the penetration of computers and cell phones. And it is measurable, although we've seen there are some flaws to the measurement. Weaknesses, irritation, clutter, changing metrics are some of them. And then when we think about impressions, you have all kinds of, a video is a different impression from a banner. It's different from email. So each type of internet advertising, I think it's fair to say, has a different kind of impression, quality of impression, and have different CPMs as well. So you can't really make a blanket statement about it too easily, I think. So we reviewed history and background, types of advertising, from banners to video to social. We didn't talk too much about creating ads. We're going to talk more about that when we get to mobile and video and the need to get people's attention up front. We did talk about trends with programmatic and privacy and some other things. And we talked also somewhat about strengths and weaknesses. Next topic is going to be mobile marketing. But I'm going to stop this here.